Hi, my name is Ann Sermons-Gillis, and I am a member of Unity of Charleston. And I'm interviewing different people that belong to the church, that work for the church. And this morning I have one of the Friends of Unity. I want to welcome this morning Brian Crissey. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so here we are this bright, wonderful morning in
Yes,
Charleston, South Carolina, so to speak. And I want to ask you, where were you born?
I was born in Indianapolis and raised in Illinois and schooled in Maryland and worked in Virginia and DC and Illinois and Oregon and moved here about 26 years ago, at least to Western North Carolina. And then we only just recently, last few weeks, moved here to Mount Pleasant to be with family.
Ah, so you live in Mount Pleasant now.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay. So you have family here.
We do. Pamela's son, Chris, has a family here. They lived with us for a while in Western North Carolina. And then they eventually moved down here and bought a townhouse, which got too small when they started having kids. So they got a regular sized house and rented out the townhouse. And when we decided it was time to leave Western North Carolina and come down here, we decided to either rent or buy that house. So we've been busy. We've been busy renovating the old townhouse, and it's beginning to get spruced up. We still got a lot of boxes around and all kinds of things half put away.
So how long have you been here?
Well, probably 7 weeks or so.
Oh, not
Uh,
very
we
long at
haven't really moved here. We were living with Pamela's son and family for a while until we had this place well enough organized to actually move into.
all. Okay. So
Mhm.
you have a family. You have her children, and do you have any other children?
She has one son, Chris, who lives in Mount Pleasant also, and they're the ones that kind of coordinated our coming down here. I've got three kids, and they are scattered around the world. I've got a son in Seattle, and I've got a daughter with three kids in Southern Oregon, and I've got another daughter with two kids in Western Australia. And so we're heading there in a few months to visit them. It's a big production to try to go visit that family.
I can imagine. So you've got
Yeah,
people strung around the world,
we do. So
all
thank
over.
God for Zoom and such things, FaceTime.
Absolutely. So,
So
uh,
we have a 3-year-old that we've never held.
oh, well, I know you're
COVID
excited
and everything.
about going.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
we are.
yeah.
It's going to be good.
So tell me about your career, what you've done, what you're doing. Are you retired? What did you do before?
I'm retired now, but I started off after I was in school. I was in mathematics and computer science, and when I graduated from Johns Hopkins in 1969, Uncle Sam kept feeling my muscles and saying, warm, elbow works too, get this guy. And I got drafted. I had a choice of what to do, but I didn't want to leave the country and I didn't want to kill anybody I had no beef with and all that. But I did eventually work out a way in which I was able to be drafted for the minimum time, the 2 years. But then they put me into the Pentagon with top secret clearance to do work that I can't tell you about, or then I have to tell you, I have to go ahead and kill you then. So I wouldn't want to do that, But it was really top secret. But I mean, it was to me, it was kind of silly to have that kind of clearance. I was using my computer background to take on the question, how can we get rid of the draft? Because if you get rid of the draft, nobody is going to be interested in going into ROTC, and that's the source of the incoming second lieutenants and all the rest of that for the Vietnam War. And if you get rid of the draft, you're going to run out of second and first lieutenants and then majors and captains, and you're going to have a problem keeping the officer ranks filled. So what are we going to do about that? So they said, Private Crissey, come here, solve this problem. And so what they had me do was to survey the officer corps of all four branches and ask the officers that were getting close to leaving what amount of money they would take in order to stay for an additional period of time. So I conducted that survey and found those numbers. And then I developed a computer simulation model of the structure of the officer corps in the presence of these end of service bribes, and to see if we could figure out how we could compensate for the loss of the draft. And I got those numbers and I gave them to my superiors, who it was a multi-disciplined area there in the Pentagon. So I was working under an admiral. I gave him the numbers and he took them to the Joint Chiefs and they liked what they saw. And they incorporated those numbers and made him into a general. And they said, thank you very much to me. And that was the end of my service there. But then they implemented those numbers and got rid of the draft before too long after that. So maybe I had some positive influence on the world. So that was just 2 years of it. And when I got out of that, I went back to Johns Hopkins to graduate school and left there with a PhD in computer science. And from there, I worked with the National Academy of Sciences on an energy study as to what will be the energy supply and demand and environmental issues and so on with respect to all these different energy sources coming up in the future. And I was one of the staff officers on that, and we produced a pretty big and authentic analysis of all the different energy sources and so on, and presented that to Congress. And about that time, the study was beginning to run down. Timing was running out and so on, and it was time for me to get out of there. And the main this was my introduction to fake news and the rest of that. But we did authentic scientific research and writing during this, and our conclusion, if you actually look at it, the book is about yay thick and small print, and who's going to read that? But if you do read it, you'll find out that what the study concluded was that what we really have to do, and this was like in 1975, what we really have to do is get to renewable energy sources and use our energy resources more efficiently and all the rest of this. It was a very kind of green-oriented conclusion. But at the end of the study, they started getting rid of people. They just were running out of the budget and everything, and they offloaded me. And the only people they left on the study at that time were ex-nuclear engineers, and they gave them the task of writing the summary that will be in all the papers and so on. And what came out in the New York Times and Post and the rest of that was National Academy of Sciences concludes it's all nuclear and coal from here on out, which was totally not what we said. But by that time, we were out on the road somewhere in a different job and everything. And they wrote the way they wanted it in order to influence the policy on their behalf. They liked nuclear power, and I didn't at the time. But in any case, when I saw what they did with that, I just kind of wondered, what am I doing here? Spinning my wheels, doing all this work, this hard work for years, and producing something that gets basically spat on and thrown out and twerked around so that it's something other than what we intended. So at that point, I left Washington, D.C., and I went to Illinois. I worked in industry for a few years, and then I had an opportunity to begin teaching computer science at Illinois State University. I went there and taught there for 10 years or so. And eventually I saw other opportunities and moved out to the Willamette Valley in Oregon, and took a position at Linfield College, where I had the opportunity to create a new computer science department from scratch, and I liked that. So I did that for a number of years. But eventually, what got us out of there was just this idea that Oregon is a very beautiful place, but the little footnote there is 3 months of the year. The rest of the year, it's gray and drizzly and 40 degrees, and it really burdens your soul until the sun comes back. And that was just too much gray and drizzle for us, and so we eventually left there and found an opportunity to come out here, moved to Western North Carolina about 26 years ago, and finally retired out of that teaching. And at that point, we moved in with my stepson and family, and then
and tell me about. Let's kind of go back to your career. So
sure.
I know that you have a ministry. So tell us about that to bring us up
Okay.
to present day.
All right. Well, it seems like my life has often been kind of parallel um, tracks, and there's always a spiritual track as well as the more official track that I talked about. I started out in central Illinois in the Methodist church. My father was very um, pious and active in the church, and so I tagged along with that for a long time. When I did go to Baltimore to go to school, I thought that I would just continue. I went to the local church there, and when I got into the sanctuary, I saw a sea of blue hair, which kind of threw me for a loop. These were all older people that were in there, and I didn't see any young people of my age. There really wasn't much of a young people's life in the church there, so I didn't do much with that while I was there. So, but at some point later, when I was married to Pamela, her sister was a minister in the Alliance of Divine Love, the ADL, and she always kept Pamela informed on all of this. So she invited Pamela to consider being an ADL minister, and so Pamela looked into it and went through that process and became ordained. And then the two of them ganged up on me and suggested I do the same thing. So I went through the process and became an ordained minister as well. So the two of us are ordained ministers in the Alliance of Divine Love. And it's worked out well for us. We're not as active now as we have been in the past, but we are still active in the group. It's a good group. The thing that we liked about it is that it has no doctrine. There's no "thou shalt believe the following" A, B, C, D. You can believe what you want, and that's fine. And there's no pressure to go one way or the other. There's a lot of openness, very similar to Unity in a lot of ways. And what they say in the ADL is that each minister carries their chapter on the back. There's no buildings. There's no place where people gather. So people will create chapels in their own areas. They'll do it out of their own homes. They'll create buildings. I mean, there are ADL chapels, mainly in the United States, some in Canada, Mexico, and other places around the world. So it's a good group, and we enjoyed and still do enjoy being with them. And so we've gone down that route, and in a parallel vein to that,
let me just ask you.
Sure,
Let me ask you about that, and that is, did you ever have a group that you ministered to, like a gathering, weekly gathering or monthly gathering or something like this?
We have over time. There was for a number of years a chapel in Hendersonville, North Carolina, that would meet on a regular basis, and we were part of that. I would often give talks there and run groups and so on. And so we did that quite a bit. We didn't ever try to gather membership and make it into a church like that. But we did meet with a lot of people that had similar interests to ours, and were able to do that on a regular basis for a number of years. But the odd thing that we need to mention is, how did my spiritual quest begin? We really have to just be honest here and go back to what started me and also started Pamela, and part of what was in between us. And that was when I was 16, I had a summer job as a counselor at a boys camp in Wisconsin. And I was on what they call guard duty this one night. My friend Antler, my name was Blue Water and his name was Antler. It was an Indian themed camp, and we still don't know who we are. I don't know his name, except I kind of ferreted it out, but we never really kept track. This is way back before internet and email and all that sort of thing. So we didn't do very well keeping track with each other. But Antler and I were on guard duty this one evening, and what was going on there was it was a boys' camp, and there were cabins out in the this open area, and there's like 3 different villages, and Antler and I had the duty of walking from cabin to cabin in the senior village with the older kids, between like 8 o'clock in the evening and 10 o'clock, when people had to be back in their cabins. And we were just walking along this one evening, and it was clear, and we saw a light moving in the sky, and we didn't think much about it, but there wasn't anything else to look at, so we watched it, and we just couldn't figure out, what it is that would work like that and move like that. It was like this. It would move like this and pause, move and pause, move and pause, and it came out of the north and went all the way around. Eventually, left going east towards Milwaukee, and we knew that airplanes move steadily, and if it was a balloon or something, it would just move in a slow way with the wind. It wasn't that. We couldn't quite figure out what it was, but we were smart guys, so we understood what it was. It had to be a balloon where the gondola was swinging under the balloon. Of course, they don't do that, but we were just young kids. We didn't know anything. So we said, well, that explains that. So we left that alone, went on with our duties. But later, we looked over in the sky over in the east, and the light was coming back. So if it was a balloon, it's coming upwind. So it's not a balloon. There's no noise. We didn't know what it was, but the track it was on was not distant and transverse to us, but rather was on a track right towards us, and it was coming out of Milwaukee and coming straight towards us. So we just walked over to the point that was closest to where that thing would be, whatever it was, and it continued to move and come closer. And at this point, it gets into areas that are just not provable. Most people don't have these experiences, but whatever it was, there was a feeling, and I know you've felt this. Most people do from time to time. Like, let's say you're sitting in a movie theater and somebody's staring at you from a few rows back. You feel that. Well, we felt that. There was an awareness. Whatever it was aware of us. We were aware of them. And at that point, it stopped moving. It was about 100 yards away, and it was maybe 40 feet in the air. And it stopped. And we could see the shape of it. It was perhaps about the size of a city bus. Had some lights along the side and so on. No prop wash or noise or anything. And we were just getting scared to death. We didn't have a chapter in the counselor's manual on what to do with an alien invasion. That wasn't in the table of contents. So all we could figure out to do was to get between it and the boys And so we just hunkered down there, not knowing exactly what to do. This was back before 911 and such things. We didn't have cell phones, so we just stayed there. And then the weird part is that at that point, a bright light comes out of this thing. It's like a flashlight, a flash bulb going off, kind of electric blue. And it was just shockingly bright. And the weird thing after that is that I don't have any memory until later when I find myself out in the woods somewhere scrambling up towards the counselor's lodge. So I don't know what happened during those times. And at some point, I'll probably need to go back and do some regression and find out more about what actually happened there. But I came up through the woods and burst into the counselor's lodge and disturbed all the games of hearts and things like that that were going on. And I was at this point, I was crying and I was blubbering. I couldn't speak. I was pointing at the sky and made quite a scene. And people saw what it was, and I was able to communicate enough to suggest that they ought to come out into the meadow and look into the sky. And so they came out looking for it. And we stayed up all night pretty much looking for whatever this thing was in the sky. Never saw it. And so about 3 or 4 in the morning, they started making wisecracks about what a good actor I was. And it's probably time for us to go home and get some rest. So the party disbanded and we went home, and the next day was just the same. And nobody talked about that topic. And it went on with canoes and swimming and all sorts of things. So the thing that really hit home eventually was that the next night, Antler and I were off duty. Other people were on duty, and about 9:45 or so, the door slams open, and these 2 counselors come in, and they're crying and pointing at the sky and blabbering. And the same kind of thing happened to them. They were heading back to the counselor's lodge, and something was above them in the sky, and a blue light came down on them, and they were paralyzed. They couldn't move until whatever it was turned off the light, and then they stumbled into the counselor's lodge. And we stayed up late that night again looking, and nothing happened. Next day we didn't talk about it. So and then life went on from there. And so when something like that happens, you first thing you find is that you can't talk to everybody about such things, right? Because they find it threatening or something, and they remember scary movies about alien invasions and things, and they bring all that up. And that's not anything like what was going on here. But so you have to be very careful about who you can talk to about such things, because you don't want to get anybody scared. And but eventually I would find people that I could talk to and share this information with. So we eventually, over time, started resonating with people that had similar experiences or had similar understandings. And that's when I met Pamela, and she'd had a similar experience the same summer I did. She was in Reading, Pennsylvania. You can ask her about it when you have a chance to interview her. So the 2 of us had that as a place to start, where each of us had this anomalous experience that kind of changed our way of thinking. Because when you go through something like that, what you can't conclude is, well, yeah, we're alone in the universe. We're just lonely here. We are the pinnacle of God's creation, and this is the best he ever did, and there's nobody else. I mean, you can't go there. There is something else, or some other people, or something. There's something out there. And the second understanding that I gathered from that was that you see this pattern behind us on my screen there. That is one of many crop circles that have appeared. This is one that really affected a lot of people. And the reason I bring it up is that if you look at the circumstances with where this was created, this was created a month to the day before the 9/11 events. And it was created overnight. The night before, there was nothing in that field. And it rained and thundered and stormed all night long. In the morning, when the clouds cleared and the sun came out, this was in the field. It's 1,000 feet across. There's 409 perfect, mathematically perfect circles impressed into the crop there. And having rained and everything, if anybody did this by hand, there'd be mud, there'd be foot tracks, all kinds of things. There was nothing, no tracks of anybody having made this. It just appeared. And it's not the only one like that, but this is the one that was most spectacular because it is so mathematically perfect and big, and it occurred so quickly in the rest of that. So that began my inquiry into that whole realm of what are these crop circles, why are they here, what do they mean, what do we do with them, and all that sort of thing. And the conclusion I had to reach early on, from when I first had my close encounter to when I was able to work with crop circles like this, and that is that whoever makes crop circles like this is way in advance of us, and we can't do anything like this. They took this design and they took it to several engineering firms to get bids on what it would take in time and money to make something like this. And it was typically, well, 6 months and $3 million, we'll start on it. No, how about overnight in the rain in the dark without lights? Can't do that. So you eventually conclude that things like this are not being made by humans on this planet. Therefore, there's somebody else. And since we can't do this sort of thing, whoever's doing this is a lot more advanced than we are. And if they are more advanced than we are, if they chose to delete us, we wouldn't be here. So they have chosen not to delete us. They are here, but they don't hurt us. So they must not intend to hurt us. If they didn't intend to hurt us, they would, but they didn't. So there's intelligence on the planet that's not us. And so that began a whole parallel vein in my career, which linked up with Pamela, and the two of us set up a book publishing company in which we published a good number of books over the years, about starting with our own experiences, but giving other people the opportunity to share their experience and so on in an environment where nobody's going to scoff at them, and try to do it in an intelligent way. Here's this is the latest book that I can't see that, but that's the latest book that we brought out.
Yes, if you'll send me a link to your website, I'll put that in under the video. Well, so that's kind of what started you off in your spiritual journey. Well, maybe you were already on it, but this gave it a kind of a real jump start. How did you find unity from this journey of yours? How did you discover unity?
Okay. Well, what I began to conclude, once I have these kinds of experiences, and you look back at, say, the Methodist Church and all these other bodies that are out there, and typically what they, one way or another, the church will usually expect people to buy onto a set of beliefs and so on, and do things in an orderly way, and tithe and give money, and that's okay, that's fine. But it was not the usual thing for any one of these regular religions to say anything about the possibility that we're not alone on this planet, that there's there's angels and that sort of thing gets talked about. But in terms of other civilized beings being on the planet with us, they wouldn't talk about that. And the ones that would be way out, kooky land places. That's all. They're totally focused on that, and they have their own conferences every year, and it's all about UFOs and the landing zones and all the rest of that. And it's more than that. I mean, it's way more than that, because you have to eventually observe that this world and we are spiritual beings, and the spiritual reality is, if anything, the primary reality, and what we've imposed on that is this idea that there's a 3 dimensions plus time kind of interpretation that we can use, and we can use science to figure out how fast objects drop from gravity and all this sort of thing. But the what really needs to be done here is you have to realize that this thing, you have to call this pattern behind me a spiritual thing, because it is not done by boards and ropes. It's not done by people walking in the muddy fields in the rain and the dark. This is done by some kind of a concept manifestation, and went
And so
many
I just
years
wanted
acquiring
to
that. Yeah.
get you back to the question. I've got another call in 15 minutes. So
Okay.
just back to the question, how did you find Unity Church?
Okay. Well, I was looking for any kind of a church that would be open to the possibilities that I was encountering. And Unity and also the Alliance of Divine Love share that commonality, that the people in those faiths are allowed to believe whatever they want to believe and say what they want to say. There's a freedom to that. And so when I was beginning to be involved with the Alliance of Divine Love, I did start giving talks, and groups gathered and numbers increased and all that sort of thing, because people have an intense interest in this, especially when you approach it from the point of view of this whole topic being a spiritual topic and not just a woo-woo outer space science fiction kind of topic. It's all the same. And so as I was going along here, I came across Unity. There was a Unity not too far from us, but it was still about 45 minutes to an hour drive from where we were in Western North Carolina. And it was a nice, beautiful Unity church, and we would go up there from time to time, but it was just a little bit too far of a drive for us to go there on a regular basis, and so we didn't really do much with that. But when we were working with ADL there, at one point the spiritual leader kind of stepped aside, and Scotty came in, our Reverend Scotty from Unity, and she was the lead there for a while, and so we became friends with her and enjoyed having that. And that was a little closer. Hendersonville was about 20 minutes from us instead of 45. So we we were associated with Scotty for while she was there. And when she moved back to her former home in Mount Pleasant, we stayed in touch with her, and we thought, well, there's a possibility we can go to Unity in Mount Pleasant. So we followed up on that, and when we did have the opportunity to move down here, then we started attending the Charleston Unity. And so there we are.
Well, you have got a story like not many people have. I'm not going to be able to hear all of it because we're going to have to go. But I just wonder, were there any books that you have read during your life that you think were very instrumental in your spiritual journey, or awakening your mind, opening it up?
Well, I liked a lot of things that Greg Braden talks about. He is more of a showman than a researcher, but somebody's got to do it, and he does a good job on that. So a lot of what he developed, I've followed in with some closeness. So that and there's been others, but I usually get discouraged a little bit when the leaders start putting down their own set of ideas and putting their own terms on everything, and insisting that everybody use those terms and understand it the way they do, and that's fine. But I really kept looking for something that was able to encompass the larger reality that I was seeing. So I don't have any particular gurus that I follow. I'm open to all of them. So I'm interested in whatever truth anybody can come up with. But what I do, one of your questions was what practice do you follow, and favorite books and things like that, and then what's the philosophy of life. I can talk just a moment here on the philosophy that I tend to follow. First thing that I carry is that we only know one thing, and that is we don't know anything. I mean, all of these religions and so on, bless their hearts, but they profess to know things that I think they may not really know. They experience things, they come up with conclusions, they package them together, they promote them, but we don't know anything because we at any particular time the situation may change. You may understand things differently tomorrow than you do today. Things may happen to you, like my experience there in Wisconsin in 1962, I think it was.
That would change you. That would change perception.
And you can't see that coming.
Right.
And so the day before that, you say, well, I know all this stuff, Well, you don't. You don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what you can't know. So it's all kind of open, and we can do our own path. I think the second principle that I follow, the good man said this: judge not. And I wouldn't say anything more than that. Judge not. Why should you not judge? Because you don't know what's coming tomorrow. The whole thing may be different tomorrow. So if you judge today, it's because you are making an assertion about truth, about something that you cannot make that assertion about, because you don't know what the truth is. You don't know what the truth will be. So I would recommend everybody just stay away from judgment of all kinds. Of course, the moment you do that, all politics falls apart, and it's all about judgment. A third principle that I try to follow is to be good to every living thing. Every living thing, mosquitoes included, and ticks. I mean, every living thing has a right to be on this planet and share it with us. We are all one big system. And another thought about not taking anything personally: if you get criticism coming to you, look at that criticism as reflecting the critic. It's coming from the critic, and it's not about you. So don't let that stick to you and have you feel bad about it. And be impeccable with your word. I mean, whatever you say, do that, and always do your best. Those are part of the four agreements. So those are just things that I've picked up along the way that help me stay on my journey. And I try to every time I breathe, I think this is something I picked up from the Lakota Indians. Every breath is a prayer, and every step is a journey. And so that's your life. You don't need much more than that.
Well, I think that pretty much sums it up. I want to thank you very much for being here today. I wonder if you have a farewell parting goodbye that you might share with us.
Well, let me see.
You've given us your advice, or well, not advice, but I mean, your principles. Pretty powerful principles.
I would say another thing that the good man had it right: fear not. I mean, there's nothing to be feared. I mean, you are fine. We are fine. We're going forward. We're on this beautiful planet. We have an opportunity to be here. We learn from everything. So expect to learn from everything. And the moment you start focusing on fear and letting fear into your life, things will go kind of haywire from there. So fear not. Whatever happens to you is not to be feared, but it's to be learned from.
Okay, that's great advice. Well, again, I want to thank you, Brian, for joining us today.
Well, thanks for interviewing me.
Seeing you in